if I told you that one of the best players in the 90s, who was a walking double-double, an all-star, and an all-NBA caliber player, would completely disappear from basketball completely? But then, years later, he will come back from a career-ending injury and be one of the biggest pieces on a championship-level team. You probably have never heard this story before, but I guarantee you know this name. This is Antonio McDyess, the most underrated player in NBA history. Antonio Keeflin McDyess was born on September 7th, 1974 in a small town called Quitman, Mississippi. This town had a population of about 2,500 people, and it was the type of town that everybody knows everybody and they're really close. Now, growing up in rural Mississippi in the 80s and 90s meant that it wasn't a lot of opportunities. I mean, what much can you do in a small town with 2,500 people in the 80s and 90s? I tell you what Antonio found, that was basketball. And the local gym was Antonio's second home. Early on, Antonio earned the nickname Dice, not because he was a gambler, but because of his willingness to take risk on the court, because of how explosive he was. And his unpredictable style of play became very, and I mean very, crucial to his development. By the time Antonio got to high school, a couple things were clear. McDyess wasn't just good, and he wasn't just some other local ball player from Mississippi. He was special. He stood at 6'9" with incredible athleticism, and he dominated high school basketball and became one of the top 30 players nationally. His explosive leaping ability and his raw power caught the attention of college scouts all throughout the country. He even was able to earn a spot in the oh-so-prestigious Magic Johnson Round Ball Tournament, which featured some of the top players throughout the entire league. Now, sharing the court with NBA stars was huge for Antonio. I mean, think about it. You have a 17, 18-year-old, 6'9", powerful, one of the top players in the entire nation, sharing the court with some of the biggest stars in the NBA. That had a huge impact on him, and it was a big reason into proving to himself that he could make it out of Quitman and he could possibly be a star. Now, as I mentioned, Antonio was one of the top players in the nation, and a lot of colleges were attracted to him. So what does that mean? He had a lot of schools to choose from when it came to decision day. But in the end, he would pick Alabama. Now, what made Antonio pick Alabama? It was because he felt like he could make an immediate impact while also developing his all-around game. And boy, did he do exactly that in his time at Alabama. Now, Antonio was spot on with that immediate impact. He was an instant sensation. His combination of size, athleticism, and improving skill set made him nearly unstoppable in the SEC. And by his sophomore year in 1995, he was averaging 17 points with 10 rebounds per game. McDyess was able to earn second-team All-American honors and was projected as a top 5 draft pick. But unfortunately, his story takes a dramatic turn here. After just 2 years at Alabama, McDyess declared for the 1995 NBA draft. And in the era where players would typically stay 3 or 4 years to fully develop, this was a very bold move. It's something that wasn't very common at this point. It's nothing like today, where we see plenty of players who will go one and done and head straight to the league. But back then, this was huge. So going into the draft, it was a couple questions. Who would take a risk on this sophomore coming out of college? Although Antonio was one of the best players, not just in the SEC, in the entire country, and he was a top 5 player in the draft, who would really be willing to take a risk on such a young kid who had a lot of issues that could come with him? He's young. He could be immature. He couldn't be fully ready to be accustomed to what everything the NBA comes. The money, the fame, the grind, the discipline. This is just a lot of things that was going through teams' heads.
With the second pick in the 1995 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers select Antonio McDyess from the University of Alabama.
The Los Angeles Clippers would select McDyess with the second overall pick in 1995. But that pick would be immediately traded to Denver, and this trade would be franchise-altering for the Nuggets. While he was in Denver, McDyess was able to find his groove. He played alongside a bunch of veteran leaders, and they helped develop him into one of the league's most feared power forwards. His athleticism was off the charts. That had been a consistent thing ever since he was little, and it was the same thing as soon as he got to the NBA. We're talking about a 6'9" player who could run the floor like a guard and dunk on anyone who dared to challenge him. But what made McDyess truly unique was, despite being one of the NBA's most youngest players, he was also one of the most dynamic stars. He was incredibly emotional and humble, something that you wouldn't expect from a player of his age. Sports Illustrated actually wrote something about him. They said, he was so bereft of bravado and he's not afraid to cry in public. Teammates would describe him as sweet, a teddy bear, huggable, and likable. This was the player who treats rims with utter disdain, but somehow off the court, he was a gentle giant. By his third season, McDyess was averaging 21.2 points and 12.1 rebounds per game. And on February 28th, 1999, he might have had the best game of his career. He put up a career high in points in the NBA game. He scored 46 points at home when they were going up against Vancouver, in which they won 116-112. Here's his stat line: 46 points, 19 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 4 blocks. Those are video game numbers. Those are the type of numbers where if you booted up 2K right now, that's something you will go out there and do. But he did it in real life. He made his first and only All-Star appearance in 2001 and finally got the recognition that he deserved. But just as he was entering his prime, tragedy would strike. Early in the 2001 and 2002 season, the athletically dominant power forward fell to an injury that seemed to be career-ending. It was December 2021. McDyess goes up for a rebound. It was routine. He had did this plenty of times throughout his career. But when he came down, his left knee would buckle in a way that made everybody in the arena go silent. And the diagnosis, once he got to the hospital, was devastating. A complete rupture of his patella tendon. Now, this wasn't just any injury. A rupture of a patella tendon ended careers, especially back then when they didn't have the technological advancements that we have now. You see, the tendon connects to your kneecap and your shin bone, and when it tears completely, it rarely, if ever, returns to full strength. And for a player like Antonio, whose game was predicated on his athleticism and his explosiveness, this seemed like the end. McDyess went under multiple surgeries and spent nearly 2 years trying to rehab and come back. And on October 8th, 2022, with 1 minute and 55 seconds left in an exhibition game against Phoenix, McDyess re-injured the knee while dunking a rebound. And he would undergo surgery 4 days later. Now, most people wrote him off. Most people thought he was done. I mean, not only do you rupture your patella tendon, which is a career injury in its own right, you then come back and get injured again on the same knee. It had to be over at this point. That's what you might think. After missing essentially 2 full seasons, McDyess faced a very rough decision: retire as a promising career cut short, or reinvent himself completely. He chose the latter. The Detroit Pistons would end up signing him for a full mid-level extension, and as a member of the Pistons, McDyess was successful of reinventing his game. The McDyess who returned wasn't the same explosive athlete who was dunking on everybody and averaging a double-double. This was a more smarter, fundamental type of player. He became a defensive anchor, a veteran leader, and a crucial role player for one of the best teams throughout the entire 2000s. With the Pistons, McDyess helped the team reach the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times, and although he wasn't the star he was before, he was something more valuable: a winner who understood his role and executed perfectly. He was simply a star in his role. He's a testament to his character transformation. In his first year with Detroit, he averaged 9.6 points and 6.3 rebounds while shooting a incredibly efficient 51.3% from the field, which ranked top 20 in the entire NBA. He had completely reinvented his game from an explosive athlete to a crafty veteran who was deadly from the mid-range and turnaround jumpers. Now, after helping Detroit be one of the best teams in the entire 2000s, he would eventually leave and sign with the San Antonio Spurs on a 3-year deal in July of 2009. And in San Antonio, he became the ultimate veteran presence, and he played alongside Tim Duncan and guided him to being one of the greatest power forwards of our entire generation while contributing his own championship experience. The young guys on the team sought his advice, the coaches trusted his basketball IQ, and the fans respected his journey. I mean, how couldn't you? A dude who have been through 2 career-ending injuries and realistically shouldn't even be playing was now one of the most pivotal players throughout the entire NBA. But after 2011, at 36 years old and 16 NBA seasons, McDyess ended up walking away from the NBA on his own terms, which is something that seemed like impossible a decade ago. But here he is, finally calling it quits after being one of the best players that we have ever seen. Now, Antonio won't be talked about in the same breath as a Kevin Garnett, a Chris Webber, and a Tim Duncan, because honestly, he wasn't as consistent as them, and he wasn't as good as them. But a big reason for this was because just as he was entering his prime, just when he was about to take the next step in his career, he would get injured, and then he would get injured again. But his ability to not only come back from these injuries and be one of the best players throughout the entire NBA and contribute to high-level basketball is a testament to his resilience and how great he was as a player. He gave us something rare in professional sports. It was proof that basketball IQ, determination, and adaptability can overcome but a lot of the physical limitations you may face. He showed us that success isn't always about being the best player on the court, but sometimes it's just about being the right player at the right time. Over 16 seasons and 1,000 games played, 1 All-Star appearance that represented so much more than individual achievement, he was one of the best players in his role and in his time in the NBA. And a career that survived a devastating injury and thrived for over a decade after this. So, the next time someone tells you about the great power forwards of the late 90s and 2000s, mention Antonio McDyess and tell them about the player who was a walking double-double, came back from a career-ending injury, and quietly became one of the most respected veterans in the entire NBA.